So I'm really lucky today to be talking to Gemma Creagh, who is the writer and director of new short Conveyance that had its international premiere at FrightFest Glasgow last weekend. Welcome and thank you for your time, Gemma.
Thank-
How was your experience? Like, firstly, congratulations. That's a huge festival to be premiering at.
So we were absolutely thrilled. So I love Glasgow anyway. I have two cousins over there, so any excuse to go over and see family. It's a great city, so I'd be back and forth, and also it's a nice, cheap, quick flight, which is which is satisfying as well. The theatre itself is incredible. The atmosphere at the festival is brilliant, and I think specifically the FrightFest Strand, it was a real honour. Like where it would have screened before this would have been film festivals. So we might have had one or two local film festivals in Ireland and two industry festivals, which is brilliant. You're down there with other filmmakers, but I think it's like as a filmmaker, it's a really good honor to have to share it with people that like their love is horror as a mainstay and quite intimidating. Like I'll be honest, I was very nervous.
I mean, the fact that this is your first short as well is a huge accomplishment. I can't speak today, Gemma. Accomplishment. There we go. So well done. That's fantastic. And I've only ever been to Fright Fest in London. I haven't managed to get up to Glasgow yet. But you know that if a film's got the Fright Fest seal of approval, that's a massive seal of approval. So if anyone hasn't heard of your short Conveyance or if they haven't seen it, can you tell them a little bit more about what it's about?
Yes, so it's a comedy horror about a young couple that are struggling in the rental market. They are struggling to afford their first house. They have terrible roommates, and all of a sudden they find this beautiful dream apartment overlooking South County Dublin, huge, spacious sea views. So the pair of them move in, and Brian is a little bit superstitious, so he starts to experience strange phenomenon, but is quickly dismissed by Suzanne, who doesn't believe anything is there. But then things start to escalate, and they try and bring in some experts to help cleanse the space, but to various degrees of success.
It is a really fun show, and I think anybody who's ever been trying to rent for the first time, buy their first house can really like relate to what they go through. And not to give any spoilers, but in years gone by, quite often in horror films, people would say, why don't they leave? Why don't they get out? But with today's rental and buying market, you can understand why people may be a bit more persistent to stay where they are. And it was a really, really fun film. So well done. It was fantastic.
Thank you.
You're clearly a film fan. Are you a horror fan in general, or is this your first foray into creating horror?
Oh, I love genre. So I also love sci-fi, I love fantasy, and I love horror. I'd go under the triptych. I think this is my first film as director. I would have written a few things before. It's hard to get genre stuff funded. But the second thing I ever got funded, that I ever got commissioned was sci-fi. So I do love, like, I love horror. Like, I love a good meaty horror that the themes are really strong and that delves into the depths of like some psychological trauma or like approaches things in a very clever way. Because yeah, I like that. It's that bit of escapism, but sort of like wallowing and processing the fear or trauma that you're yeah that you're living through. And I think that yeah that like some of the best things are, like how a haunting could be a metaphor for domestic abuse, or how intergenerational trauma presents as like yeah like that it's like that it kind of weeds its way into how you process the world and what's dealing with you. And those metaphors are so good. So I've always loved it. I used to work in like a video shop. That's how old I am. I worked in a
Oh,
video shop,
wow.
and I would have like just constantly been watching all the DVDs. So everything, like all strange manner of things, but like that we had a really good horror section as well. And I'll always remember one of the guys came back in. He was like, like, and because horror was one of the best things as well. It's such a kind of like night in with popcorn session that people do. But I'll always remember there was like a subtitle section, and someone came back and they're like about audition. They were like, "This is a reading film. I need my money back."
Reading film. That's so funny. Well, it can definitely tell that you are a fan of the genre because as funny and light-hearted as Conveyance is in places, there are moments of genuine creepiness and fear, and those moments that you do see in possession films, in scarier horror films, that people are oh, what's the word I'm trying to think of, Gemma? They're familiar with. There we go. They're very familiar with some of the signs of haunting in this property. So I did find that a really nice balance and blend of sort of like, this is funny. These characters are likable. They're funny, but then you're sort of going, oh God, this is serious. Like there's some serious haunting things and like little nods as well. You can go, oh, I remember a similar thing happening in this film and it just the way it played together was a really nice balance. So well done.
Yes. One of
You
my
did
friends is,
mention,
oh,
oh, sorry, go on.
one of my friends is an actor. So she was cast in a lot of horrors and she's this like beautiful blonde and they kept putting her in bathtubs. So when I wrote this, like I knew I wanted to put our male guy in a bathtub because like that's one of the things that I was like, it's such a, like it's an old school trope, but you know, like the sensuous bath where everyone we always
Hmm.
get murdered in them like as women. But like it's the sensuous bath and the sensuous shower, and I was like, that's not what showers are at all. They're about cleanliness and cleaning, and they're like they're not all this. So I thought originally when I planned to cast Brian, I wanted someone really awkward. So you set it up like it's the sensuous bath, but then you just have like a kind of bumbling off awkward tech guy. But actually, it backfired on us because Patrick is so sort of beautiful as an actor. It just became female gaze then.
Well, it was quite funny because I noticed the bathtub obviously as you go into that scene, and I thought, oh, bathtub, I know what's going to happen here. And then I thought, oh, wait, no, it's a guy, probably not. But then you played with our expectations, which I really liked. I really enjoyed that. You mentioned about having funding and how difficult it is to get funding for horror and genre stuff. Do you have any advice as a first time writer director for people going out and getting funding and just putting together because it's such a well put together film? It's surprising that it is a first when you watch it. So do you have any tips for it, people?
Um, so I think I would have edited before. So I think that really was one of the things that helped me, and I would do event management. So one of the things that if you prepare yourself, if you do familiarize yourself and even cut together one or two things before you go into the edit, it helps you see how everything cuts together. Because if you see there's one scene where like I mean our budget was tiny. We had 13,000, but it's like a 15-minute thing with a load of locations. Like that went really quickly and like a sub TV show that we were filming. So that went really 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 fast and like that we actually one of the reasons why it's so eerie is because our sound is so good. We had like a really brilliant composer,
Hmm.
Natasha Paulberg, who creates that like very industrial, that very metallic sound, that unnatural kind of sound that kind of like weaves its way through. So I and again as a filmmaker, sound was really really important to me, and I think I spent a lot of time coming up to filming it listening to a lot of things, and I had just watched Foe um just before we shot this, and there was all this eerie wind around it. So like I think it's just once you have your eyes open and you know internally what you want, and like just to be aware of all the different things that can influence it. Someone also said like what was your influence for this, and I gave like Book of Mormon, even though it's totally a different thing as one of the references because I wanted it to work both as a comedy and as a drama and
Hmm.
as a instead of a musical as a horror, and just wanted to be aware of that. And I think I tried to do like there's so many things as well that you would do again, like if you had more money or if you kind of do have to just abandon it. Like I would have edited it for another week. I would have done another sound mix for another week. But I do think like all those skills and being prepared just to, you kind of have to go with the flow in terms of what's happening on set and where things are going, and but also know enough that you can pivot. So like that was I think that like editing though was one of the most helpful things because yeah, the scene where Brian levitates, I knew that would, I was like, "Ugh, this will be very tricky to get. We do not have a sound, like a visual effects team. We do not have anything to do this. I was like, we just had to find the right instrument. Good thing Brian, Patrick Martins has a strong core, um, and then just kind of hold it up. But it was just like a stick. So, but I knew when we'd get things together, and I knew when we could kind of cheat things, and I knew like the obviously you're not going to get all the coverage that you want, but I did have that instinct for like when things would work and when things weren't.
Yeah, I think you can definitely see all of those little elements you just mentioned in the film because it is very well thought out. They don't feel like any of the scenes are sort of there as filler. Everything is very well, like the editing's lovely on it, and you can tell watching it that you know your story, you know your character, you know the direction it's going in. And even though you only got 15 minutes, it's a very well contained story and you know where the characters are going and how it ends up. So fantastic, well done. I mean, it's a huge accomplishment.
And I have to do a shout out for that because the thing is collaboration. And I think one of the things where you're like, this is your first short. No, I was collaborating with brilliant people, and that's why it looks so good. Like, if I was left to my own devices, there was a million things that would have been terribly wrong. We had a great script supervisor. Our DOP Yara was fantastic, but what you just picked up on there was Phil Shanahan. So has an encyclopedic knowledge of horror. It was brilliant to edit with him. He sat down like we were sitting in front of like a wall of horror DVDs, and he'd find cheats because like again, you're trying to cut into things, you're trying to make things go faster. I think there was certain beats like if we'd had more time, I would have spent a little bit more time with them. But it was like you really have to get it down as short as possible, especially for placing in festivals. It's hard, if anything. Like I mean, 15 minutes is still like if you could get a 12 minute, that's even better. But like that, we had plot that we had to hit. Like it was a very specific amount of escalations that happened. I think there was probably only one or two things that we could have cut. But he found that beat and he found that groove, and he was very good at kind of setting up like for comedy and for horror in terms of jump scares and in terms of like punchlines. Pacing is so important.
Mhm.
So he really helped us find those punctuations, those beats. Like we'd argue as well where he'd be like, this needs a little bit more time. And we'd play around and find them, and I actually think just collaboration was actually how it does look so good.
Fantastic. You mentioned about the festival. Something I really want to point out is Saturday was International Women's Day, and you were the only female director that whole day. So another, not to wax your car too much, but like another congratulations. Like that's fantastic. I know Fright Fest are fantastic at showcasing female writers and directors and creatives, but for you to be that one woman on Saturday, fantastic. Well done.
I'd liked if there was more though. It's
It would have
sad.
been
Yeah.
brilliant. I know they were the day before.
Yeah, there was. That's it. But I suppose I think as well. There's great local voices, and there was a great range, and there was very strong feminist projects as well that had a strong feminist ethos. I actually had to Google. I didn't know who Ali Cook was, and I was like, is that she? Because it was such a strong feminist like theme to his work. I was like, oh, okay. So I wasn't too sure, but we also had great representation in terms of cast, and yeah, I think in stories as well. Like, but it's always better to have more. I was the project manager of Women in Film and TV in Ireland, and I know Women in Film and TV in the UK do a brilliant work highlighting and are great at networking and things like that. So, like, we'll get there.
Is there, I know I said with like general advice for a first time writer director, but is there anything specific for women that you can sort of mention? Because I know it is quite hard for women to get into the film industry, and there's so many of us who've got creative ideas or different things they want to do, but sometimes it does still feel very much like a boys' club, especially horror.
Yeah, I would say like join your women in film and TV. Be vocal on social media. I think one of the things I have noticed this. So I have a I like I'm the associate editor of Film Ireland, so we would get lots of press releases, we'd get lots of work. I mean, at a certain level, you're hiring a PR team and they're going to push you out to do work. But the people that would have contacted me through that would be men. Like they'd promote their own work and they'd contact us asking us for help. And of course, if we could, we'll help them. But I noticed with women in film, I was like, I had to contact all our members and be like, you need to send me your work. Like if you're doing good work, like make sure to share it and get the word out. And people can be, I think, yeah, our automatic instinct, and whether or not it's that we're trained to, is that we don't necessarily like big it up. But I kind of think like even if you're not doing it for you, do it for the person that is coming up behind you that wants to go into your shoes. Because if you don't, like maybe people might necessarily know that you've done that or how great your role is. So I think the thing is like we all have imposter syndrome. Like I think that is like across the board, across most things, across most industries, and it's to embrace that and just do it anyway.
Mhm. I think that's really great advice. Like, say about imposter syndrome. As a neurodivergent woman, I have huge imposter syndrome. So even doing lovely little things like having a chat with you now, I just think, who am I to have this chat? I'm just somebody who likes horror, who likes to talk about film,
So
but
which
it's an
flavor?
opportunity I get.
So
Oh, I'm double fisting the neurodivergence. I've got ADHD and autism, late diagnosed.
So Brian is autistic and
Oh, great.
Suzanne is ADHD.
Oh, that was a fun set then.
Yeah. So oh no, no, the characters. So they're based
Oh,
on myself and
sorry. Yeah.
Brian. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So they're based on that. So he's like a computer engineer who misses cues just in the beginning, but then picks up on them when he realizes that he has missed them. And she's someone that just talks over people and doesn't and has to learn how to shut up sometimes and listen.
Mhm.
And that's how they bond together. So I was like, that's why.
They've become real people in my head. When you said Brian and Suzanne, then they were real people, not the actors, not the characters. They are people themselves. You are clearly a fan of film. You work in film. You create your own film. I love to talk about film with people, specifically horror. So you seem very knowledgeable about horror. So do you have any particular favorite directors, films, subgenres that you wanted to talk about? Because I have a little podcast and I love people to just talk about what they really love and what makes their heart sing. So is there anything in particular you love?
Well, I'm probably there's two projects that are coming out of Ireland that I'm really excited for. So there's on Tavish, damn, I've pronounced it wrong again. I'm so sorry.
Antaisha?
On Tausha, yeah, yeah, on Tausha. I was like
Fantastic.
literally just
Love it.
that. So it's so exciting. Like that to me is so mind blowing because, like, I mean, I'm gonna say this, like, he did that with no resources, absolutely no resources, and just went out and shot that like while he was in college with
I
cast and crew that
know.
were like around that, and it's like it's getting a cinematic release now, like this
I'm
month.
so excited.
So that's really exciting. And then there's Damien McCarthy, whose film Oddity I just thought was one of the most beautiful things in the world. It's I always felt like it's like for goosebumps for grown-ups that it has that
Yes.
real like all the monsters, the magic shop. It's so sensorial and it just like it there's just something about the voice there that's really powerful. So they're really exciting. There's Kate Dolan is coming out. She like I mean she's just her career is doing incredible. I think she's directing now for TV, but her feature film like she has feature films as well. She's like really really one to watch. And there's another Irish language horror film that looks really exciting. Oh, that looks really exciting. That's great. So it's kind of like I'm very there's a lot of like interesting Irish horrors at the moment that I've just really enjoyed watching and that do are kind of like the next generation of film voices. So that's exciting. And then I think in terms of like international things, I really enjoy like because I'm not around the festival circuit as much, I don't pick up those like weird hidden gems in the same way I did. Like
Mhm.
when if you're working in a video shop, like you watch every single thing and you go like this is the strangest film like out of Korea that you've picked up. And I was like, I miss finding those gems because like when you're old, you don't have time to just constantly like wash, like let things kind of wash over you. It is more of a targeted thing. But I do think like there's certain titles that, like Get Out, obviously, like
Mhm.
it was the blend of comedy and the darkest humor that's the thing that really appeals to me. I think there's like a sort of funny rage behind it and the humor. And I know it's like the most obvious comp, but it just doesn't stop being good. Like it's like one of those things that um and then, like, I will say, like, Midsummer and Hereditary, I think it's just that the themes are so deeply embedded and truthful, and the worlds are so strange. And I even really like folk horror. I do like the things that I don't like is when things are misogynistic or in any way. And I
Mhm.
do think things like that can slip in when people aren't conscious of it. But I just really thought they handled like the emotional core of what they were trying to say, but like also it was just so shocking. Like you're just there and you are brought on this like horrific journey, and it is saying something about like the pain of that world and the violence in that space, in those two spaces. But then underpinning it is just like a guy that can't break up with his girlfriend, or like a woman whose mum is a bitch. And that's true for people. And I
I
quite like
love
that.
both of those films. Sorry to talk over you then. Hereditary is one of my favourites ever, 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 and I could talk till I'm blue in the face about how incredible. And again, that is just the audacity of somebody like Ari Aster coming in and that being his first feature film, and there being, such accomplished everything in that film is just mind blowing. So people like Ari Aster and you do a good job right out of the gate. So rude.
Oh, thank you. I will take my name in a sentence to the name any day of the week. But yeah, no, it's really yeah, and I think but that's it. It's the emotional truth under it. And also like you never know where you're gonna be. Like you cannot go, this is where that film is. If you hadn't read anything or sat down, you'd be like, oh yeah, I know where this is going. And so often you can, and sometimes that's fine. And it's about the journey, and it's about the performances, and the nods and stuff. But I was like, you could just sit down. You're like, I don't know where I'm gonna end up at the end of this film. I'm like, wherever it is, it's gonna be stressed, but in a good way.
Yeah, I was very lucky with Hereditary. I didn't see the trailer beforehand, so I had no idea. And lots of people said, oh, the trailer doesn't give anything away. So I was like, well, I'm definitely not going to watch it. And I was clutching at my face with fear because I just had no idea where that film was going. And it's just absolutely beautiful. But what I did really love is the first thing you went to when you said about horror was talking about Irish films, because I'm exactly the same with Welsh horror. I'm on a little journey trying to find films from Welsh directors, Welsh stories, Welsh actors. If I can find Welsh language as well, fantastic. So I do have a Blu-ray on the side waiting to be watched that's in Welsh language. The Feast Igwelydd, I think it is in Welsh. But you mentioned Antaisha. I think that's how you pronounce it. That's the
Yeah, yeah,
first
you
film I'd ever
right.
seen in Irish language, which I was lucky to see at FrightFest last year. That was on my list of films that I really wanted to see. And I was sat on the staircase because I had to sneak in. And I was absolutely terrified. And it was a read-in film, like you said. I had to read the subtitles, otherwise I had no idea what was going on. But that meant I couldn't look away. And I was genuinely terrified. And I think it was such a fantastic film. And then, like you said, he made that whilst he was in college or uni. I went back to look at some more information about it, and I was genuinely flabbergasted, like how incredible that film was. And it scared me. And it does take a lot to scare me now because I'm just so well versed in the beats of horror. It still managed to scare me, which was fantastic. So I'm really excited that that's getting a cinema release, and hopefully more Irish and Irish language horror will get more of a platform now.
Because I think like our shared sort of like the mythological world in which our like our cultures, like you guys have fairies as well, don't you? Like
Hmm.
the that kind of, yeah, like we've druids and things. Like there's a lot in that, those things, and I think they still feed into, like, even though we don't consciously believe them, like people still won't build a road in a place. Like, And what's funny as well is there might be like an ecological reason. A lot of the things where like myths are born from is that there's some sort of bit of truth to it that, and like where people might follow a river or there might be a path and it's a pilgrimage, but it's like it's so embedded in history. And I think like there's a lot of kind of shared both intergenerational trauma and myth that makes, like, I don't know, like a lot of, in both of our heritages, like a lot of good horror films. Like there's a lot
Mhm.
to unpack in terms of what you could cover, and like and the way that you can look at things in a different way, what you're saying.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot in the shared history as well of like our individual cultures being suppressed and squished, and feeling more of that coming out into the world, and people going, actually, no, I am Irish, I speak this language, or I am Welsh, and this is how my life is. I really appreciate that we're seeing a little bit more of that coming out into film in general, not just horror, but a bit more in general film. So I'm gonna let you go, Gemma, because I've taken up lots of your time. It's been very lovely to talk to you. Is there anything else you want to share about Conveyance, or anything you're working on next? Give
Yeah.
people a little
Oh,
hint, a clue.
I have a few things in development. I have actually, we're talking about that heritage. I have a feature film about a druid that
Ooh,
is that is like nowhere near finished development. I have a play about neurodiversity actually, and I have a like a nice contained first feature that I'm hoping to get across the line. You know yourself, like there's millions of things you want to do, and I think I would love to get a recommendation for a good, solid, classic Welsh horror film to watch.
ooh, okay. I recently watched Darklands, which I've never seen before. 90s horror set in South Wales, folk horror vibes, very of its time. But I'd never seen it before, so that's the first thing that springs to mind. Just because I haven't seen it before, but I have heard fantastic things about Digweled, the feast. So that is on the top of my pile. But as I'm sure you can appreciate, that pile is ever growing and gets ignored on a daily basis. So I'll get around to it at some point.
That's it. So will I. That's on my list now. I'll watch
Hooray!
that. I'll have that
Well,
watched
I'll
next time.
oh yeah, absolutely, and then we can share notes. But I'll definitely be keeping an eye out to see what's coming next, especially a Druid related project because I'm really excited about that. But I'll share your links in the caption so that anyone watching can give you a little follow, keeping
Brilliant.
goodness me, put my
Yeah.
teeth in. Follow along with what you're doing. And again, thank you so much and congratulations and well done on a fantastic short, being the only woman on Saturday at FrightFest and premiering, international premiere at one of the most prestigious festivals in the world.
Oh,
So
we were
well
thrilled.
done and congratulations.
Thanks so much. And thanks so much for having
Yeah.
me. It was delightful to be here anytime.
3 weeks later.
What's goodbye in
Oh,
Irish?
Slán.
Slan. So Davorki, Hwyl fawr in Welsh.
And what's that literal translation? I presume it has some kind of like poetic.
So Davorki is good morning to you. But it's a general like bye, and then Hwyl fawr. I can't remember what Hwyl means. I think it means fine. So it's like big fine. I think the literal translation is big fine. I might be wrong. Any Welsh people watching, please don't come for me. I'm still learning Welsh. At 38, I've been learning since I was 3, but I'm still learning. But yeah, I think it's like it might even be big fun.
So the
Big fun.
poetic the
Big
poetic
fun, Gemma.
origins of language is so fascinating as well.
Oh, Welsh is bonkers when you start breaking down all the little things. If you're interested in Welsh, actually, there's a Welsh creator called Dean Morris, I think, or he's Dinosaur, Dhean, Dinosaur on Instagram and TikTok, and he's been doing videos about what the Welsh translations are for animals, and they are absolutely hilarious because they make no sense, and the there's so many different words for the same thing. And then the different variations used in different places is fantastic. So if you're interested in Welsh and the language, can't recommend those videos more. They're so funny.
Brilliant. Definitely. We'll take a look.